The question says, determine if the relationships are linear or nonlinear and drag the relationships into the box. So you've got 4 different relationships, and then you're going to drag them either into the linear box or into the nonlinear. So first, let's look at the 2 equations. We talked about a linear equation is in the form ax plus by is equal to c. That is a linear equation. That's standard form. We also looked at slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Those are also linear equations. So if you remember, there were some of those red flags to look for. How do we know if something is not a linear equation? And some of the things we said that were if x and the y were multiplied together. That's not linear. What else is linear or would not be linear is if the exponent of the x or y is something other than 1. So this does not have an exponent of 1. That doesn't have an exponent of 1. So those would not be linear. We also said that if the x or y was in the denominator, that is also not linear. So if I look at our 2 equations, I can see that this first equation is not going to be linear because the exponent of the x is not a 1. So this is not linear. The y equals x squared plus 1. And on your test, what I believe you have the capability to drag that into that column. So that is not linear. But then if I look at the other equation, that is linear. It's in slope-intercept form. The exponents of the x and of the y are 1. The x or the y are not being multiplied together. The x or the y are not in the denominator. So this would actually go in the linear column. So now if I look at the table, to find a linear equation or a linear relationship from a table, you're looking for a constant change in the x values and a constant change in the y. So if I look and see how my x values are changing, to go from 3 to 3, you add 0. To go from 3 to 4, you add 1, and to go from 4 to 5, you add 1. That is not a constant change. I'm adding 0, I'm adding 1, I'm adding 1. If I look here, to go from 4 to 5, I add 1. To go from 5 to 6, I add 1. And to go from 6 to 7, I add 1. So I have a constant change in the y's. I do not have a constant change in the x's, so that is not linear. So again, linear relationship, you would want a constant change in the x's and a constant change in the y's. So on your test, again, it would allow you to drag this over, but you would want to put your table in the nonlinear column on a question like this. And then if we look at the graph, our graph right here, linear function means, or linear relationship would mean that it is a straight line. And the graph that they give us is a straight line, so that you would put over here in the linear. So a linear relationship would be a straight line. So this is what your problem should look like. This first equation, linear, it's in the form y equals mx plus b or ax plus by equals c. This is a linear relationship because it's a straight line. Nonlinear because the x has an exponent other than 1. And nonlinear because there's not a constant change in the x values and the y values.